sun or the 14th night, a full moon, appear in the room. So he sees this woman and he says, wow, this is a woman that's so beautiful, but she's actually walking, so he runs out of the room. He runs out of the room, and if you would have heard his grandfather talk about this, he said, yaar, ek save ke liye yaar itna mara gaya, main kal kamre mein ghus gaya, ab mere saath kya hoga? You know, and he said, I went into the wrong room. I'm going to be in trouble for this. But he went, he went back to the owner and he said, listen, I walked into the wrong room. I walked into a room, where the woman was not crippled. She was walking. So I apologize for that. He said, no, my son, that is your wife. When I meant that she was blind and cannot see, I meant that she has not seen anyone who she wasn't supposed to look at. When I said she was deaf, I meant that she hasn't heard anything which she wasn't supposed to hear. When I said she couldn't speak, she hasn't spoken anything, and nothing's coming out of her mouth that she's not allowed to speak about. She hasn't walked or used her hands in any which way that the Sharia prevents her from doing. That Sharia, if it tells her not to do it, she's not doing it. That's why I said that. That is your wife. And when two individuals of such character come together, right, you have kids like Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. So it's not just that you can't just blame the local scholar, or you can't just blame, your Maulvi Sahib guy, bache kharab ho gaye, but if you throw the blame on someone, it starts in the house. And to be honest, it starts before you make a house. And that's where the reflection needs to come in. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, many people you hear them, like I said, an individual like Ibn Taymiyyah has written 2 volumes on less than 30 pages written by Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani in honor of them. Ibn Jawziyah, Ibn Kasir, these are over 90% of the entire ummah of 1400 years declares him as probably within the top 10 of men that lived in this ummah. That's why we call him Piran Nabil, Dastagir. Like his karama, books and books have written on just how he used to care. And to give you an idea, we hear about the things he used to do, but what was his biggest weapon? What was his biggest kamal? Is because the moment he woke up to the moment he went back to sleep, which was very little, whatever was in between, he made sure that he was lifting his hand, lifting his feet, using his ears, using his eyes, moving his tongue, breathing like the way the Prophet ﷺ had done. He mastered it. He mastered it. And it wasn't easy. He talks about himself that a time had come when he was in Baghdad. Well, aadmi is par soche thoda sa, and it's unbelievable. He went searching for scholars right in Baghdad, and I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to close on some of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because then what happens is once you start acting a certain way, once you start walking towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala runs towards you, right? And walking towards Him means that you have to walk like the way the Prophet ﷺ walked, right? And if you're walking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala runs, but on that running, once you meet, you get bestowed ni'mah. You get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Follow those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed His ni'mah on. What's ni'mah? What's ni'mah? That today I'm standing here again in Rhode Island, close to 900 years later, and talking about the character of an individual who lived in the streets of Baghdad. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Thousands. He's not even the messenger of God. Imagine what the status of the messenger of God ﷺ is. that hundreds and hundreds of scholars have written books upon books upon books about Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. You know, is because they live. This is just one example. He says when he went to Baghdad to go search for the deen, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he went searching for scholars, right? And he talks about living a life that years would go by that he would have to search for food. So he says one day, this is Ghawth-e-Pak. Yeah, imagine कि वो खाने की तलाश कर रहे हैं आज कौम जो मर्जी लोग बोले क़यामत तक 11वीं के खाने बढ़ते ही जाएंगे. Why? Is because of what he says. He's searching for food. He's searching for food, and he says, by the time that this day had come, I had mastered the areas, the slums within Baghdad where people used to throw their leftovers over. That I used to search for so much food that at this point in time, I had mastered the locations where people used to throw away their trash to search for food. This is Ghawth-e-Pak. Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani is saying this. He says, so I'm going around Baghdad. It was a very cold night. I'm searching for food. So one slum after the other I'm going. It just so happens people are beating me to it. So he says, I go to the riverbank. I'm walking across the river. I maybe some search for some vegetables or some greenery. There was a lot of garbage that people used to throw around the river. I still couldn't find any food. So he says he starts walking back. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani says he starts walking back to Baghdad, to the city. He says, I saw a masjid and I said, why not? Why not? Let me just go see. He says he walked in the masjid and puts his back against a wall, and he says he felt the closeness to what people described as death. He was so weak at this point that he hadn't eaten and drinking in days, that he's sitting against the wall and he's saying to himself that I feel that there's a possibility that I'm going to die soon. So he says, as I'm walking, I'm sitting leaning against the wall, he says a young guy that looked just like that, because you could tell that if he's from out of town. He said a non-Arab guy walked into the mosque with a big loaf of bread, right, and some meat and sat down. He's a man of God he was doing this for. So he said, I showed no interest in the food. Allahu Akbar. He said, I noticed he was sitting on the other side. He had the loaf of bread. He had the meat. I'm close to dying. It got to a point, he says, every time that guy lifted a bite to put in his mouth, he said, my jaw would drop. You know, you see this in cartoons. It got to that point of hunger that he said every time he would eat, I'm sitting far on the other side, every time his mouth would, my jaw would drop as if I'm eating it. But he said all of a sudden a thought came into my mind, reflecting. He said, I said to myself, Abdul Qadir, you know, you've done this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not going to give you food. That's not your food. If he wants you to die, then you're going to die. Enjoy your death. Because you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, as soon as I said this, right, the brother that was on the other side of the mosque noticed that I was sitting against the wall. He said, oh, you, come, eat with me. He said he didn't see me move. He said I couldn't move. I was so weak. He got up and came and sat next to me. He said, here, have some food. Where are you from? He said, no, I'm from Jilan. He said, no way. If you hear the translation, if you read this, literally, this is the way it's talking. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani is describing it like this to like the guy said, no way. Get out of here. You're from Jilan? And Ghawth-e-Pak is like, yes, I'm from Jilan. He said, well, I'm from Jilan as well. I'm a traveler. And I'm looking for a guy by the name of Abdul Qadir. And Ghawth-e-Pak looks at him and says, are you saying? He said, yeah, I'm Abdul Qadir. He said, why are you looking for him? He said, no way, get out of here. You're Abdul Qadir? And literally, this is the way the dialogue's happening. He said, why are you looking for me? He said, I've been looking for you. I just left Jilan, your hometown, our hometown. Your mother, right, she gave me 8 gold coins for you. Right? And she's like, how ironic. After my travel, mera jo apna kharcha tha, whatever money I had on my own money, my money, I finished it 3 days ago, searching for you. So after 3 days, I felt like I have, the Sharia gives me permission to use your money that I had to at least eat so I won't die. So I went and bought this bread and meat from your money. Wow. And you're sitting here today and eating my meal, but it's really your meal. You know? Allahu Akbar. And he said, well, here's your money. Your mom gave this for you. And so he gives him the money. Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani says, we ate the meal. I gave him some of those gold coins and I kept the rest and we moved on. This is how he was living his life. This is the mujahidah, this is the struggle that he was living with, you know. And after you live these struggles, then you come, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you. He blesses you that Khizr alayhi salam would come and talk to him. He blesses you that his grandson, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani's grandson, imagine the grandfather, the grandson when he passed away, the entire district of Baghdad wanted his funeral to be read in every suba. So what they did was they took his body and would travel around the whole city. They don't even know how many funerals he had. Itna नेक इंसान था कि उन्होंने कहा कि शायद इस पूरे शहर सूबे में बरकत ही बरकत हो जाए कि भाई इसको हर जगह नमाज जनाजा हो. You know, and like his character was such that unbelievable, unbelievable. They call him the pole of awliyas. You know, Father Sahib says that Ghaus Azam darmiyane awliya, Chu Muhammad darmiyane anbiya. You know, so that's the character. In closing, the reason why I'm saying is you know, we can all struggle, and I say this about myself. And that's what these scholars are talking about, you know. The muhabbat that they say about the Prophet ﷺ is so essential that it leads you to believe or actually try to fulfill his actions. You know, try to fulfill the way he used to walk, the way he used to smile, the way he used to treat his wives, the way he used to treat his kids, the way he used to treat his nephews, the way he used to treat his grandkids, his businessmen, his friends. Today, unfortunately, we don't even, you know, we're lost. You know, we think twice before going to a janaza. यार उसके जनाजे में जाना भी है या नहीं जाना है. आज से 10 साल पहले जनाजे और शादियों में लोग चले जाते थे. यार लाज रखने में मरना और खुशियों में चले जाते थे. आज तो वो भी नहीं रहा. यार मुंह दिखा के आ जाते यार फलां के कुल हो रहे हैं. फलां की शादी है यार मुंह दिखा के आ जाएंगे. ना खुशी के रहे ना गम के रहे. You know, what are we doing? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me the ability to adopt this message, and all of us as well. It was an honor, a pleasure. May this community grow, large enough that we all look back and remember these days. May Allah subhanahu